Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Allbrands Show. I am Barbara Chatelaine. I'm so happy that you're joining us today on this fabulous Tuesday, this Tech Tip Tuesday with Mr. Thompson. And I hope that it is very tutorial for you. So let us know where you're watching from. Oh, look, we have two folks from Austin watching, Kim and Julie so far. So good to see you. I will be doing a big giveaway at the end of this video, so stick through to the end, and we will be giving away a $100 allbrands.com e-gift card, and we will also be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you did pre-register, we will randomly select some questions from those and for our live watchers. So good luck there. So I invite you guys, if you did not watch our previous tech tips with Mr. Thompson that we did earlier this month. Yes. No, February. It was in February. It's all about the basics of how to clean your machine, make sure it's in good working order. So I definitely recommend that you go back and watch that video. Oh my gosh, we have so many folks watching now. Cheryl from Brownsville, good to see you. Roxana from New Mexico and San Antonio, woo! And Tennessee, Cynthia, hi. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see everyone. Hi, Diva Jones, yes. Oh my gosh, Brenda from Houston, great to see you. Well, I won't waste any of your time with my face because we have an expert, an Allbrands San Antonio technician in the wings. His name is Stephen Thompson, and we're so happy for him to be here and to learn a little bit more about sewing machines, how stitches are formed, and what is timing. So here we go. I'll bring him in. Hey, Stephen.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Good. Looks like everyone in the comments is saying hi. Oh my gosh, Cheryl loved our last video.
Awesome.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah. And Elaine from Wisconsin. So I have so much notes and my head is so full of like, oh my gosh, well, what can we talk about? But yeah, so y'all don't forget, like, comment, and share this to be eligible to win the $100 allbrands.com e-gift card. So there's so many reasons why a machine could maybe not form a stitch correctly. Timing can be one of those things, right?
Absolutely. Timing is probably one of the most important aspects of the machine and probably one of the most confusing or not understood aspects. There's a lot of little things we can look at ourselves. Some things can seem like a timing issue, but may also be simple repairs or adjustments that can be made at the house. So hopefully we can address that and, prevent you from dragging your machine around in the middle of a project.
Yeah, or bringing it in for repair unnecessarily when you may be able to get something done at home. But definitely timing of a machine. If you're not a trained certified technician, it's important to bring that in to a certified technician like we have at Allbrands. But there's ways to diagnose if it is timing, which we'll be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, it's one of those things, it's not able to be corrected without the proper information.
Yeah.
Guessing at it's just going to lead to more frustration. If I didn't have access to the information and the training needed, it wouldn't be feasible to get the job done properly.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do is at least show a machine disassembled to go over all the components, give you at least an idea of how to visually inspect the machine to see if it looks like it would function properly. If it doesn't, then it might be a great time to reach out and have somebody assist, with that evaluation and repairing it if need be. And if it does visually look like it's going to be okay, we can walk through some steps that hopefully you can resolve the issue yourself.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Nellie says hi. She says San Antonio is her store. Good to see you, Nellie.
awesome.
Yeah. So, like I said, before we did go through the basic maintenance, if we have time at the end of this video, I think we should retouch on that. But before you check timing, always rethread your machine with quality thread, new needle, new bobbin. Make sure the bobbin case area is clean. And everybody, I know you don't want to hear this, but read your manual for your machine when you get it from cover to cover, because it will save you time in the future. I promise you.
Absolutely. There is a lot of times a simple needle change or a rethread goes a long ways sometimes to fixing what seem like huge issues that turn out to be something simple.
Yeah, and also, like, Stephen, when you're doing embroidery, say you download a design on the internet and you're using like a specialty stabilizer or specialty thread, before thinking that maybe the machine is malfunctioning, go back to basics. So put in a cotton fabric, cutaway stabilizer, standard needle thread according to the manual, and choose a built-in design on the machine. Before you troubleshoot and think that, and bring your machine in for repair unnecessarily.
Absolutely. There's so many variables to it that, I don't think anybody could ever know all of it. It's changing as each digitizer comes out with a new project and a new material to stitch on. So going back to basics is always an awesome idea. It's a quick way to determine if we do have a real issue, or if maybe it's something as simple as a needle change, changing the machine's embroidery speed, adding an extra layer of stabilizer. It's crazy. It just keeps going on and on.
Yeah.
I know, Barbara, you do have that illustration. I think that might be a good thing to look at, and then we can go on to the actual machine and try to explain some of the parts and show how they work with each other.
Yes. So here is how a stitch is formed.
All machines are going to function pretty much the exact way. Different machines are going to be in different orientations, different parts, but at the end of the day, all the machine is doing is catching the loop of the upper thread and creating a knot. So once you kind of are comfortable with that thought process, diagnosing issues a lot of times becomes a lot simpler. As long as you can get the machine to do what you see in the illustration, it's going to create a stitch.
Yeah. So Stephen, let me tell you what I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right. How a stitch is formed. Like, I do know that this hasn't changed for like a century and a half. So like the take up lever on the front of your machine that goes up and down loosens the thread, and then the needle goes down into the fabric, which you see from the top. It wraps around the hook, which turns it in a circle, picks up the bobbin thread, and then the feed dogs moving backward is what locks that together.
Yeah, when that take-up lever drops, the slack that it creates is what allows us to get that loop that you see in the illustration. You get that loop that's created on the back of the needle. That's the clearance that we're going to be able to allow the hook to catch. Once the hook catches it, it'll wrap it around the bobbin thread, to create the stitch. And then, of course, the tension that the upper and lower are always kind of in a little tug of war with each other is going to pull that tight. And then, of course, the feed dogs are another form of timing, right? Because it needs to move that fabric out of the way at the appropriate time to not pull the needle, bend it, pull the fabric. So that's another form of timing we'll go over, to where all of those items got to kind of be synced up for the machine to run smooth and efficiently.
Cool. And I do know it's not just the bobbin that needs to be timed by a technician, but it's the needle bar height has to be correct in the beginning, and then the turning of the bobbin case, or what do you call that? The shuttle?
It depends on the machine. Rotary hook,
the spinny thing.
Because several different versions.
Yeah,
but absolutely.
And then the feed dogs pushing the fabric this way is part of timing as well. So it's different things.
The computerized machines, there's also little sensors and synchro discs in there that have to be timed appropriate. That way when, the machine knows where the mechanical aspect of the machine is at. So there's that simple word timing does kind of lead us to at least 4 or 5 different variables that all work together.
That's so cool. Well, I know you have a machine there on the workbench that we
do have a one of the brother machines that I went ahead and stripped apart. That's going to kind of give everybody an opportunity to see the mechanical parts a little easier, which hopefully it'll make it easier for everybody to understand what's going on and be able to understand and see the relation between the parts a little easier. The main thing everybody's been talking about is timing. The main timing that we'll go over, we've just kind of discussed a few of them, but hook timing. We got a top loading brother. So we have the rotary hook here, which once it's something that you're all familiar, right? I do have needle plate and everything removed, but normally we have our bobbin case in the machine. So that's what most of you are going to be used to looking at, right? Bobbin case, once removed, the hook rotates around that. That's the main form of timing that we're going to kind of concentrate on, because there's several things we can look at to verify if the machine's going to function properly, and maintenance checks that you can do on your own just to make sure that there's no damage or anything to this part that might require a replacement. Since that item, the hook tip itself is what's catching the thread. If we have any damage on this component, normally caused from needle strikes, right? If we have some type of situation happen where we break a needle or something like that, sometimes that can cause a burr, scratch, stuff like that to the needle tip, which you might start thinking is a timing issue because you might start getting, skip stitches or weird tugging on the fabric or something like that, where mechanically it might be timed, but because we have an issue or some damage to the part, that it's going to cause not ideal stitch quality. Overall timing, we kind of talked about as a relationship between the needle bar and the rotary hook, correct? So needle bar, everybody's familiar with, right? That's what your needle goes in. So that does have a specific height that it has to be set at. That possibly can change. If we're sewing at a high speed and hit a real heavy seam, sometimes even during a needle break, that force that's created sometimes can take this needle bar and actually knock its vertical position out. That makes some pretty dramatic effects on stitch quality. So this at the correct height is going to be just as important as the position of our rotary hook. The two of those are going to work together. And in a timed machine, I did put a red needle in, so hopefully it's a little more easy for everybody to see. You can see the needle's going to come through the fabric. It has a loop created. The hook is going to spin around and catch it. So in a perfect world, you can see the hook is going to come right up at the needle.
Yeah. So Stephen, I would suggest, because before this video, I was like, well, let me look at my machine timing. Go ahead and turn your machine, like thread your machine, turn your machine off, take out the bobbin case if it's a top load bobbin like this, and just hold the top thread and watch how it loops around that hook. And then it makes so much sense, and you can see if it's, in there correctly. Oh, here's a really good suggestion from our owner and tech, John Douthit. If the plastic bobbin case has any burrs on the rim, That will need to be polished off or replaced. It will snag the top thread and cause a jam. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, damage to bobbin case and the rotary hook itself are going to cause issues. And a lot of times those come from previous broken needles. So let me see if I can get it threaded, kind of like what you were talking about, without getting too in the way of the camera.
Oh yeah, there we
go. Come down, right? It's going to create a loop, and the hook's going to come through, and you're going to see it's going to pull the loop.
Yes.
In there, it would pull that thread all the way over the bobbin case, catch the bobbin thread, and the tension of the machine is going to pull it back through, and we've created a stick. So that relationship between the needle bar height and the position of the hook is the normal timing that we're all concerned with. So quick, easy visual inspection. Needle all the way down. Different measurements and stuff are going to be for different machines. But a lot of times, if you can rotate it around and see the hook meet the side of the needle, and it's, let's just say the eye of our needles here, if it is a millimeter, 2 millimeters above the eye, every machine is going to be a little different. But just a quick reference, say 1/8 of an inch, you know it's probably going to be correct, or at least very close. Without accurate measurements, it's hard to guarantee that it's, you know, perfect.
You make it so easy. And guys, if you have any questions, please type them in the comments below. We have technicians in the comments and Stephen here to help you. So we want to empower you to learn more about how your machine operates so that you can be the best you can be.
Absolutely. So you're encountering issues, right? We've already learned from experience that we're going to immediately replace needle. We're going to check to make sure we've threaded correctly, and we're going to make sure our bobbin case is in the machine correctly and that it doesn't have a bunch of damage. At least alleviate those. Then we can do the visual inspection of needle to hook timing that we've talked about. After that, we talked about, and John had mentioned checking for burrs and stuff. Always check along the top of the bobbin case. Along here, a lot of times we'll get some damage. Sometimes we will even see this corner chipped out or a bunch of holes through here. Again, normally from needle strikes. That, as you saw, the thread was looping over everything, is going to run the thread exactly across the top of this. So any damage here, if it doesn't create skipped stitches or anything like that, it's going to start causing you to think you have, you know, tension issues because your thread is kind of tugging and looping, stuff like that. As well as bobbin case. Last time we did mention checking the rotary hook itself for any damage or burrs. If the machine's off, needle plate off, a lot of times you can easily just run your finger around the perimeter. The front of the hook is going to be an important area that takes damage. Believe it or not, another place that takes a lot of damage is a complete 180. The back side of the hook over here will get damage on it. That doesn't necessarily stop it from creating a stitch, but it will create a lot of noise and get that bobbin case to kind of bounce, which we don't want either.
Speaking of that, Sandra's asking in the live chat, she says, what are some other signs that the timing could be off?
Well, we mentioned timing would be catching that loop of the upper thread to create a stitch. So most of the time, if we have a severe timing issue, it's going to be extremely noticeable because we're going to encounter skipped stitches. If it's off dramatically, the machine's not going to pick the bobbin thread up and it's going to skip all stitches. If we're off a smaller percentage, sometimes our quilters or sewing will notice that because on wider blanket stitches, zigzag, stuff like that, one side or the other, they'll notice they're not always catching the stitch the way they should. On the embroidery world,
that Stephen, on a wide zigzag, when the needle's all the way to the left and all the way to the right, how can it be timed to pick up that top thread? Is that a silly question?
No, absolutely not. But that's why I was kind of mentioning measurements are important, because having a machine function, say as just a straight stitch, is very simple. When we have a machine swinging that needle to large movements one way or the other to create a stitch, we don't have as much room for error. If the measurement's off a little bit, by the time the needle's all the way to the left side, my hook might come in right at the eye of the needle. If it's doing that, we're probably going to skip stitch, break thread, stuff like that. Same thing if it comes all the way to the right side, we're probably going to have the eye of the needle be so far down that we're still missing the loop. We're just missing it on the top. So it's all, none of it is an educated guess. Everything is put to specific measurements to make sure that it functions correctly through that whole swing of the needle through left and right.
That's so great. And it's just amazing what these machines can do, because like you think of embroidery, free motion, where it's not necessarily pulling it back to form the stitch. I mean, that just blows my mind, Stephen, a little bit. Like, how is that? And then to make one stitch, it goes all the way around and has to pull up and back. And then you realize how fast your machine goes. So the timing is very important on that. So, oh my goodness. I think we just lost Stephen, but he'll be back in just a moment. And Cynthia, I will definitely get to your question there as soon as we get him back. So I challenge you. Turn off your thread your machine, turn it off. Take off the needle plate, and I may do that in a minute if we have time at the end, and just watch it with the bobbin in and then without the bobbin in, how it goes around to form the stitch. It's amazing. Okay, Stephen, I'm going to bring you back in. You with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, so Cynthia asks, and this may not be timing, so we may want to table this to the end, but when she embroiders, sometimes the thread comes out of the needle after a few stitches. Is there anything that she can do?
Yes, that's not timing. And I'm guessing she says after a couple stitches, it's probably after a trim. After a trim, we probably have a trim alignment issue. So it's cutting the pigtail too short. So the machine's, while it's trying to lock stitch and so on, it's pulling out. So most likely not timing, most likely cutter issue.
Oh, that's good to know.
Another thing, without sidebarring too much, always check that spring on this number 6 position. A lot of times it gets dropped underneath, and that can kind of lead to similar issues where, the customer will have the machine take a couple stitches and they realize the thread won't stay engaged in this lock. So that's kind of another point to check with those similar issues. Before I had computer issues, we were talking about signs of how to know if you possibly have a timing issue. Dramatic issues, like I mentioned, are normally pretty easy to tell because of skip stitches, stuff like that. Small issues may not be as noticeable on sewing, but become a lot more noticeable with embroidery. Normally, those small timing issues or needle clearance, which we'll talk about in just a second, the customers will start to experience thread shredding or breaking. It's not the only issue or the only cause, but it definitely can be something to keep an eye on. So if you are experiencing a lot of those issues, and we've gone back to testing with factory known designs, regular cutaway stabilizer, that might be the indicator that your machine has slipped timing slightly and needs to be addressed. So there's 3 and super important adjustments here, to make everything work in unison. We talked about the needle bar height, which again is important, and heavy seams, needle breaks sometimes can make this adjustment go out, which is going to affect timing. The rotary hook itself, I've seen people ask, what can cause it. Needle breaks are a lot. What I see kind of knock the rotary hook out of timing is bird's nests. Think about it. Your machine's at a pretty high rate of speed, and all of a sudden you get a whole bunch of fabric, a whole bunch of thread, and a lot of us sadly have experienced it. It all gets kind of built up and stuck around here and forces your machine to kind of shut down and stop. That instant stopping force a lot of times will change the angle of our hook. Again, to kind of prevent that is back to verifying threading. A lot of times I see that happen. It's a big embroidery design and it's right after, your 27th color change or something like that. And we happen to, rush through it and something happens. So the simple things sometimes are the most important to keeping the machines running as smooth as possible. So needle bar height, the rotary hook angle is important. The one other item that we have that I do see after needle breaks and stuff get out of adjustment slightly is the clearance between our needle and the hook itself. As the hook rotates past the needle, there is a small tolerance of how far behind that hook is from the needle. If it's too far behind, right, we're going to either miss that loop and not catch the thread. We're going to possibly run into thread breaks, shredding. If we're too close, the machine's going to be extra loud because every time it rotates, it's going to hit the actual needle itself, which is not ideal, right? Because that metal on metal is going to cause the needle to get hot. Hot needle and polyester thread's not a perfect situation. And it's going to cause burrs to build up on the needle and the hook tip itself, which is going to require both of them to be replaced more frequently. So again, that's another super important adjustment that if we have any binds in the machine or something can get out of alignment.
Hey, Stephen. Casey says, and I agree, Casey, she said, I hate bird's nests. Stephen is very good at presenting this information. Yes, Stephen, and thank you, Casey. And yeah, Casey, the only bird's nest I want better have baby birds chirping in it. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely. If we go back to the whole bird's nest thing, always verify your take-up lever during threading, right? That is the simplest thing that we're all used to. But when we come around and we thread that upper take-up lever, if we happen to miss that aspect, the machine just physically does not work at that point. So missing the take-up lever, I always personally, when the covers are on, give it a quick visual inspection, at that little turnaround to make sure that I've actually caught the take-up lever itself. Another thing to watch out for, if that's missed, is sometimes before the machine will shut itself down, sometimes in those first couple stitches, it's enough to start getting thread built up in the take-up lever assembly. It doesn't take much, sadly, and I'm still to this day kind of surprised that how one little small piece of thread can shut down, such a, nice, fancy machine. One little pivot point in here where a piece of thread, this is all machined quality stuff that's supposed to be lubricated, and run, at a fairly tight tolerance. So a chunk of thread getting buried and wedged in places it's not supposed to be, normally locks the machines up where you can't even turn the hand wheel.
Yeah, and it may look different to you guys on this machine because it's like inside of the machine. Sometimes your take-up lever, it's like that last little loop up before you go down. And then definitely you got to get it behind this little hook in front of the needle. But that's what loosens your thread so that it gives it slack enough to go around the bobbin, right?
Absolutely. Probably one of the most important parts of the machine, honestly. Without that take-up lever doing its job, they just do not work. And like you said, the machines have been around for a long time now, and even the original machines, had all these same components, maybe in different positions, different shapes, but they all served the exact same job. as what we have on the newest top-of-line machines available now. Now we just have the convenience of a lot of, upgrades for ease of use, ease of threading, lots of really awesome programming features.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Steve.
Other timing, I don't see this as an issue as often. And if it is an issue and you're a sewer, you'll know immediately. But another thing where the word timing can mean so many different things is your feed dogs. The feed dogs are timed to the rest of the machine, right? Because they need to come up and down and feed the fabric at the appropriate time. If those are off, when the needle's still in the fabric, we're going to take a chance of it trying to tug the needle, right, while it's still in the fabric. If that happens, we just discussed 2 different adjustments that no longer are accurate because we have another force adjusting it, right? We talked about clearance, which if the feed dogs tug the fabric, that clearance now changes. You're going to experience needle breaks and stuff like that because we're pulling the needle into the hook itself. So I don't see that personally out of adjustment as often. So it's not something that most people encounter or have to look for. And it's not as tricky. If that kind of goes out, you're going to know because you're going to have your fabric's going to be bunching like crazy. The machine's just not going to function. It's going to be breaking needles left or right. So it's a good thing to understand its importance. Something that a normal user shouldn't have to really keep an eye on. Because it's normally good to go from what I've seen, or something serious has happened, normally parts failure on a very high mileage machine, and you'll know that it needs help at that point.
Yeah. So I know there's different types of bobbins, Stephen, and we're showing a horizontal drop-in bobbin on a Brother machine, but there are a lot of machines that have front-loading bobbins, and they work essentially the same. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of vertical hook type machines, stand-up embroidery machines like the Brother PQ or PR multi-needle machines. All of the Bernina line, traditionally, almost all of the traditional sewing machines, had the vertical hooks. And we even got into several different styles of vertical hooks. That illustration would be a vertical rotary hook, which is going to be normally like what we'd see on, say, the Brother PR stand-up embroidery machines. That's going to be all the modern Bernina type style. They work the same, right? We got needle to hook clearance. We got needle to hook timing. Everything we kind of discussed is the same. Measurements are going to be different. The way they're adjusted is different. But at the end of the day, it's the same adjustments. We're still catching loops, right? So it's all still the same thing.
Making loops. Thanks, Charles Sweeten.
Yeah, that's probably the coolest catchphrase I think he's ever passed along to us.
That's all we do. We're just making loops all day.
At the end, yeah, absolutely. It can be that simple. And of course, having the information to make sure everything's in the correct specs to catch the loops, then the machines run fine.
Yeah. So in the vertical rotary hook, where does the needle need to be in relation to the hook to get it to catch? Like if they're just looking at it, do you have like kind of an idea of how to explain that?
It's going to be pretty much, honestly, in the same. I don't have one of those machines handy next to me. I mean,
it's flipped up instead of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be the same, except for instead of seeing everything laying horizontal, you're going to look at the same. Again, the measurements are different between whether it's center needle, left needle, but say it's a PR or something like that where it's a fixed needle position. Yeah, if you drop your needle all the way down and bring it back up, and the hook intersects with the right side, of the needle, say 1 to 2 millimeters above the eye, I know that's not super specific, but it's hard to be specific when every machine does kind of have its own measurements. But if you think about it as simple as catching a loop, right? If that hook comes in above the eye of the needle and not really high above the eye, you know the machine's capable of catching a loop. So that's not saying the timing's not off. It would be an awesome indicator that it's not off dramatically. So if you're encountering a bunch of severe stitch quality issues, it's a good way to see if you have a major mechanical issue or if there's maybe something else, in the setup, needle, bad bobbin case, lots of little variables. So it's difficult to know if it's exact without truly having the tools and using the correct measurements for each machine model.
Yeah. So we're going to get into our question and answer soon. So if you have any questions, please put those in the comments below. If you're watching this video after it's been presented live, you can email us at help@allbrands.com. Here's the in the comment in the video here below, help@allbrands.com. That goes directly to John M. Douthit, our owner and founder and original technician of the show. I also wanted to introduce everyone to our service technicians that we have. We have several locations throughout Louisiana and Texas, and we want to thank you, Stephen, for hopping on our live show so that we can all learn from you. So here is our service technicians. Seth, the first one, is actually my husband. We've been married for 9 years this March, and he has been working as a service technician at Allbrands since before we got married. So I think he's probably been there about 12 years now. Jake has been the service technician at our Houston location since before we purchased that store, which was over 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, thank you, Jake. He has a lot of knowledge on Brother and Bernina and everything. And Stephen from San Antonio. And Stephen, can you tell us just a little bit about how you got started repairing machines? And
it's one of those who type things. I kind of came in part-time, enjoyed the business. It was something new and exciting to, mechanically to learn, from other industries that I played in. And I guess here we are, 5 years or so later. So,
yep. And we've, for all of our trained technicians, they are educated from the manufacturers of the machines that we sell. So they're certified technicians. And last but not least, our owner and tech, John Douthit, and he is also in the chat too. So thank you for everything that you've done, all you guys, for keeping our machines up and running. So, all right, so let's get to the questions and let's see if we got any on the comments. Okay. Okay, here's a good question from Michelle. Oh, here we go. Here's one from before from Brenda. When I'm swiftly sewing, my machine throws a loop of thread around my bobbin case, which indicates the gears of doom. I'm assuming that she has a Bernina, because when something's wrong, it's the little gears on the screen. Would that be a timing issue, or what do you think that would be, Stephen?
Hard to say without a little more detail. I mean, absolutely could be. My first thought would be make sure bobbin case itself doesn't have a needle strike burr up towards the top of it, and that it's actually snapped in all the way. Sometimes if the bobbin case kind of creeps out a little bit when the thread's coming around to make a loop, it doesn't slide smoothly over the top of that bobbin case, and it actually gets stuck and kind of creates a big nest. Kind of the same with the top loading machines, especially some of the older ones that use the narrow bobbins, and they put a aftermarket bobbin that's a little too tall. As the thread's looped around, it doesn't move over the bobbin like it's supposed to, and it actually kind of starts trying to wind the top thread onto the bobbin. So hard to know for sure without seeing the machine or more info, but
Yeah.
probably could be timing. My first thought would be check for burrs or, installation of the bobbin case itself.
Yeah, and if you do all those checkpoints, like going back to basics, rethreading, putting in all your standard things, and that's not working, if you're a local customer, you could always bring your machine to our retail store to be diagnosed before committing to a repair. So if you need a second opinion, like, hey, is this threaded correctly? I know that's often always good to get a second opinion before investing in a full repair on your machine.
Okay.
Here's a question. I think it will be very educational for everyone if I bring this up. Michelle asks, if we bought from you, will our local store be upset if I brought the machine into them for service or warranty? Do you want me to answer that?
I mean, everybody's going to have their opinion on it. I don't see why any location should be. I mean, if anything, it's another opportunity for you to try to gain that customer's trust and loyalty. If you're talking service center, that's not technically how it's supposed to work. If you're a service center, it doesn't matter if you bought it from me, from Walmart, from, I mean, a service center should be there to support you and on behalf of the manufacturer, regardless of where the machine was purchased.
Yes. And that's how we treat all of our customers too. We never refuse someone's service because they purchased it from a different store. People move, we want to gain your business lifetime. And we always, if we are an authorized service center for a machine, we will provide the service. Oh, here's a good one. Denise, hi. Thanks for watching. Do you recommend a mini vacuum or attachment that can be that can clean out the little threads from the Brother Stellaire embroidery machine? Yes, Denise. We have one on our website. It's like a little mini vacuum attachment, and it's really good for sucking out the lint out of your bobbin case area instead of using the canned air to push it further deeper into the machine. Let's see. Okay, let's move over to the, let's see. Here's one you can answer while I'm pulling up the pre-registered questions. Marva asked, have you had any experience with the brunette machines?
There's been brunette line machines for a long time. My location, they do come in. I've personally see more of the older brunettes than I do the new generation. So, I mean, yes, they are definitely a popular model machine. Personally, I just don't, as service, get a whole lot of the new ones.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, and I love, there's like a brunette 38 that has that vertical bobbin hook. And it has, the best stitch. I love it. Okay, so Edwina from Texas asks, how do I adjust the tension when I follow manufacturer's rules? It is very loose. I guess that's a little general, right?
Yes.
Your machine.
Really depends on the machine. Kind of like I discussed in the previous video, there always has to be one variable that you have some type of an actual measurement. Say like a Brother PR machine, we have gauges, weights, and stuff like that to where we can set the bobbin case where we know that that is accurate. Once that's accurate, then we can, by testing and adjustment, play with the upper tension to get that balance right. So it really kind of comes down to the machine. Say we are talking about sewing or embroidery or something like that on a modern Brother baby lock, bringing up something like that where we're all computerized upper tension. If the machine's in clean, good working order, your variable for adjustment is going to be the bobbin case. Again, some manufacturers will give you tension measurements and recommend gauges. Some of them, if you know the top's right, there's certain stitches you can do. certain lengths and widths of a zigzag stitch to kind of get an idea for how much, of that dot of the top thread we should see kind of at the knots on the fabric. It's every machine's kind of a little different. There's always going to be at least one area that you should be able to have the info to know that it's the correct setting, whether it's a computerized upper or if it's a mechanical or older machine. Normally they have measurements, weights, or gauges that you can use to set the bobbin thread correctly.
Yeah, and I also think it's also dependent on your instruction manual, because a lot of machines are set up differently for how the tension is adjusted, and then the bobbin tension, and sometimes it's not even the tension. Most of the time it's not. I've found it's the threading or the thread
or a simple little needle scratch on the bobbin case or something like that that's tugging the thread, making you think the upper tension's loose when it's all about a damaged bobbin case or a rotary hook or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. And this may be a little bit of a recap, but Joanne Kimball and Rose Mosley, Joanne's in Georgia and Rose is in Indiana, asked a very similar question. So I'll just make it a twofer. How can I tell if the timing may be off? Would it affect stitch quality? And is it something that you can see? And I know maybe you could just recap that one real quick.
Will it affect stitch quality? Absolutely. Right. A machine is all about a balance. So when that balance is off, you're going to know whether it's stitch quality or as severe as a non-functioning machine. Is it something you can see and tell? Kind of like we discussed, just by the simple visual looking to see if the hook looks like it's coming around the needle at the appropriate time to catch the loop, or even holding the thread, kind of like Barbara mentioned, and turning the machine hand wheel to watch it catch. So there is kind of those simple visual things you can do.
Marsha just said, oh, go ahead. Sorry, I got excited by Marsha's question. Oh, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to get everybody. I know John is answering questions in the comments. So yeah, currently, what's your turnaround time, Stephen, for repair?
Currently I'm probably 2-day, 3-day.
That's wonderful.
As long as we have parts issues, it's normally within a couple of days.
Great. This is a good question because Marsha, I have had this happen all the time. Slowing down on how fast you rewind a bobbin, because sometimes they could be wound too tight. Sometimes if your bobbin is not wound correctly, the thread gets jammed up at the very end. Can you talk a little bit about that, Stephen? Because I do sometimes, before I learned how to properly wind my bobbin, like it would not wind correctly.
I've always been the type to where there's more than one way to do a job. I don't wind the bobbins the way the manuals say. I know, shame on me, but I don't like doing the wrap around, and then trim off. Most of the bobbins have that hole in it. While I still have good enough eyesight, I like to just run the thread through the hole and hold the pigtail. At least then I know as it's winding those first couple of wraps that they're going to be secure and tight.
That's what I do. That's what the Luminaire suggests, is that, yeah. So when you have your bobbin, you always go up through, if you have a class 15 bobbin with the hole in it like this, you always go up through the hole and then you push it to the side and wind, make it a few rotations and then clip it from the top. And that way it doesn't get caught all up in your bobbin winder mechanism. Raise your hand if that's ever happened, everybody.
I pulled thread out of quite a few machines in that area, so it's not unheard of.
Oh gosh, I'm glad I'm not the only one that did that. Okay, let's see. We have about 10 more minutes, and then we'll do our giveaway, everybody. So don't forget, like, comment, and share this video to be eligible to win a $100 allbrands.com e-gift card. All right, so, here's a really good question. Can someone retime their own machine? mechanical electronic computer. And that comes from Joanne Trudeau.
Well, I was that kid growing up that would take everything apart and figure out how to fix it. So, my gut wants to say yes, of course, right? I mean, if you have the interest and you're going to seek out the knowledge, absolutely. On the other side of that, the way most warranty statements are is if it's altered by, a non-certified service center, most manufacturers will kind of make the warranty void at that time. So with that being said, a new machine, tread lightly. Also, kind of like we discussed, it's easy to get them to look close and still encounter a lot of stitch quality issues without being able to access the correct measurements. And most manufacturers, at least all the ones that I work with, all that paperwork is labeled confidential. So it's not, an easy to find information. So, I want to say yes, absolutely, right? If you're the mechanical type, it's a mechanical thing. Doing it correctly and not causing other issues or interfering with warranty. So for most, the answer is, most people, the answer is no. There's always loopholes to it. You got a lot of info out for older, featherweight singers and, a lot of these older, little easier to mess with machines to where the info is available. And they're a kind of a great place to learn machine maintenance as well.
Yeah. So I actually called my husband. I was like, hey, I'm doing a tech thing. I'm a little out of my element, so I need some words of wisdom. What do you suggest? But he's like, hey, if you have a top of the line machine, like the Brothers and that has the labor warranty still on it, don't try to fix that. Just bring it in for your warranty repair and get it done. Don't try to take off the covers of your luminaire that you just purchased when your service center can do that for you. But
yeah, I mean, I
would be more likely to do something like that if it was like my 50-year-old antique machine. It's so funny. I was like, I don't see a lot of people driving around 57 Chevys these days, but a lot of us still try to sew on these 1950 Singer machines. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if you haven't really, I'll give you a better view because I was kind of up close. If you've never really seen how many wires and springs and stuff like that there are on these modern machines, sometimes something that seems as simple as yanking a case off kind of opens it up into all kinds of extra stuff, because we do have, and this isn't anywhere close to a top of the line machine I have here. So
Can you tell us which one that is, Stephen? Because I didn't have
a VQ 3000. So this is their higher end sewing only. So something as simple as just pulling the end cap off to try to get thread out. We do have several sensors, several stepper motors. This one has the laser guideline, module on. So there is quite a bit of stuff in here that, you can cause damage to. The older machines, I think those are, if you're the mechanical type, they're awesome platforms to get familiar with, how the machines kind of function because they're mechanical. So you don't have the concerns of knocking a sensor out or something like that. So I'm all for educating yourself and learning to do stuff, so it's hard for me to say no, but I agree with Seth on the modern, especially as valuable as some of us can be. Don't cost yourself, several $100s because something got shorted out that was touched that shouldn't have, and then it voided warranty at the same time. And, so it's make it an educated move, hopefully, save yourself the frustration of an expensive part.
Yeah, we want to keep everybody up and sewing the best way. Hey, we do have a question from one of our pre-registrants, Cheryl Carter in Texas. She said, how frequently should I have my machine cleaned and serviced?
Really kind of depends on the use and what's being used. I normally will try to say, especially let's just say we're talking about most of us have a more modern computerized machine. Those are, from most manufacturers, very little to no maintenance that the customer can do. So the longer you run it, the less oil, the less grease, and the more lint it has. So an average user annually is not a bad idea. We do have some active customers that would, or small business type setups to where twice a year is not unrealistic. I would say most fall in that, probably 1 year, stretch it out to every year and a half at the most. One thing to think about, even if you're not a heavy user, it's a machine that you can't access and put fresh oil or grease in. So even if it's just kind of sitting there, eventually stuff's going to dry out, and then you're going to run a machine that's not properly lubricated and just wear out and cause more damage. So that when you do eventually get it maintained, that maintenance cost is going to go up because of parts replacement.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Carrie, it's good to see you. Hey, and I got to say, just from my point of view, because I don't know how to fix everything, and I do sew a lot, and the sewing machine moves very quickly, and a lot of things can happen. But I think the most important thing is if you do run into a roadblock, it's not the end of the world. Take a deep breath, maybe take a sip of tea or something. Just take a step back and then try to analyze it from the very beginning. I guess that would be my best recommendation. And if you are still experiencing noises, ears, like, I guess when you start from the very beginning, you pick your good quality thread, your good quality needle, your new bobbin, you thread it again from the top and from the bobbin, and don't just slam on the gas, and try to go 100 miles per hour. Try to put some fabric under there, hold the tail of the thread back, and just start turning the hand wheel towards you and watch the stitch forming. You might see that the needle is pinging or a clicking sound is happening. And a lot of things can actually be diagnosed at home. So we definitely, if you have, if your stitches are not forming properly, if there's like a grinding noise or something serious, definitely bring it in to an authorized technician like Stephen in San Antonio. But I do know that sometimes we get machines in for service where the needle's bent, and that's something that could have been fixed at home quicker.
Absolutely. Always cover your basics. You'd be surprised how often that'll get you immediately right back to running.
Yeah, it's so hard though to just take that deep breath and just take a step back and say, everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to try to keep sewing my garment, or my project that I was doing. I'm going to get a fresh piece of fabric and start from the beginning, and it's okay. Oh, here's a question from Delia. Is it possible to over oil your machine?
Absolutely, right? Too much oil in anything causes issues. Don't need to get into the physics aspects of it, but if we keep it as simple as a machine that we oil the hook, too much oil on the hook is, as soon as you start sewing, going to get on your project. So too much oil is not ideal. Kind of better than no oil, but everything to an educated amount is ideal. If we're talking hooks, a drop of oil at the beginning of every day, another small drop every 4 or 5 bobbins, I think is more than good enough. Have a good oil pen of some sort, because some of the basic ones the machines come with, 1 drop of oil is like half a liter. So yes, you can over oil without knowing it, just because you don't have the appropriate tools.
Yeah. And the best thing is just refer to your owner's manual, because there's some machines that like certain types of oils. It likes to be oiled in a certain place. And if you don't have your manual, a lot of manuals are available for free download online. You just Google your machine brand and model number and say instruction manual. And usually you can download that and refer.
Absolutely. some manufacturers get as picky as multiple types of oil depending on where the oil is going. So, educating yourself, is always a good thing. Manuals normally will tell you exactly what you need, or reach out to your local dealer.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, don't forget, like, comment, and share this. And we'll be doing a $100 allbrands.com e-gift card in just a moment. But before that, I wanted to just let everybody know, Stephen, can you kind of explain the repair process? And I'll bring that slide up on the screen.
I mean, kind of like the machine we had over here. It's a lot of disassembly. I mean, to thoroughly clean and make sure everything is, burr-free, adjusted correctly, cases are off, a lot of things come out. Rotary hooks, eye-pull cutters, really depending on the model and stuff. But, normally it's a lot of disassembling just to verify that everything's cleaned. And during the reassembly stage, that everything is assembled, timed, and clearance is set correctly. Everything's oiled, and greased depending on the particular models, manufacturer's recommendations. And then after that point, if we get into the new machines, there's as much computer time as there is mechanical time going through all the different calibration steps before, doing final test sews to send home with the machine.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Stephen. All right. So let me just check to make sure. One more from Marva. She is very asking some good questions here. She says, can you replace the motherboard of a machine?
Again, absolutely. From a consumer side, most of the time, it wouldn't be feasible because the parts are not even normally available. If we start talking about very old machines, sometimes you can start finding stuff, but for the most part, it's something that as a user, you should never have to encounter, and would probably not be able to get a hold of the part anyways. Most manufacturers also include a really good electronics warranty. Most of us know electronics, if they're going to give us an issue, it's normally kind of early on, right? It was a slight mistake in the manufacturing process, and that cost and, skill set to replace and recalibrate is all going to be covered by the manufacturer most of the time anyway. So it's something that nobody should ever really have to deal with on their own.
Marva needs a new machine. We hope you choose allbrands.com when you choose one, Marva. We would love to earn your business. I got to tell you a story, Stephen. I think it was in 2016. We had the Great Flood. Correct me if I put that so far back in my memory, but there was a lot of sewing machines that got flooded in Louisiana and Texas and the surrounding areas. And Beverly says the creative sewing student is her store. I love it. So one thing that I thought was so cool was we had a lot of like PR machines come in, brother machines. And what I thought was so great, and I don't know if the other manufacturers do this, but I do know on the brother machines, there is a coating around the, what is it, circuit something?
Yeah.
So that flooded machines were able to, if you brought it into the service center, we had a very high turnaround rate to get them back up and running to original specifications after that. Did you?
Yeah, I got to help Jake on a few in Houston after, what was it, Harvey, I guess was the last time he dealt with flooded machines. So yeah, the manufacturer does a good job. You can literally yank mud out of them, dry them off, and replace some rusted pieces, and they're running like new again. So yeah, not all manufacturers run that way. Some of them, you put them in too humid of a room and you might have issues. So
yeah, so it's just amazing, like that the brother machines has that coating, and as long as we got them in time and they didn't corrode or rust, we were able to turn them around. So that says a lot about these new top of the line machines manufacturers. They're really Doing the right thing. All right. So we're a little bit over, and I'm sorry, everybody, but go ahead and get your comments in. I'm going to give me emoji fun sign, and I'm going to choose a $100 allbrands.com e-gift card winner. Maybe if you're local, you can bring it in and put that towards servicing your machine at San Antonio with Steven to fix your machine, or give it a spa day, as somebody called it earlier, which was so cute. All right. So drum roll, please. And our winner is Marva.
All right.
Congratulations. Maybe you can put that towards a new machine. Oh, I'm so glad that you won. She asked some very good questions too. So Marva, congratulations. If that's your son, he's so super cute. Oh my goodness. I love the Christmas sweater. And email me at events@allbrands.com, your email address, and I'll get that sent over to you. So y'all, give us some ideas. What would you like to see in the future? What do you want to know from Steven? Because we'd love to have you back on the show, Steven, on a Tuesday.
Keep your ideas rolling.
Yeah. So if y'all have any ideas, just put them in the comments below, and we will consider those for our next live. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Steven.
Absolutely.
Yep. It's been a pleasure, and I hope everyone has an amazing day. And thank you for joining us here at allbrands.com.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.